So let's talk about music. This channel is not only about my own music, it's about alternative music and lifestyle, especially goth, neofolk and dark wave music. If you're into that, I have a favor to ask you. Please subscribe. This channel is brand new, so I really depend on you to make these videos visible. Some of these questions I've been asked numerous times, and others are just questions that I find amusing to answer. I have prepared the Q&A myself, but I've tried to not think about the answers too much beforehand. Favorite band? Einstürzen Neubauten and Dead Can Dance. Best album? Einstürzen Neubauten, Silence is Sexy. Best concert? I really like intimate concerts where you are very close to the band, not a big audience, where you can just really sink into the music. But I have to say, seeing Michael Jackson at an arena concert in Sweden when I was 14 was just mind-blowing. But these recent years I have to mention Vardruna. Epic. Favorite era? 90s. Most of my music that I listen to repeatedly is from the 90s. Favorite music video? 80s and 90s. That's when music videos were an art form. There was always an interesting story or imagery that you just hadn't seen before. I used to go to my cousin's apartment and watch MTV because we only had 2 channels in my house. There are so many videos I could mention, but Madonna, Like a Prayer, I think I was maybe 8. So haunting, so beautiful, and it was erotic but in a very peculiar way that I guess I fully couldn't understand. Favorite genre? Okay, this answer might be lengthy. I love talking about genres. For me, it's entertainment. You can define genres in different ways. It might be very technical, like you couldn't make synth music without the synthesizer, or rock music before guitars. But after that, genres evolved, they overlap. You can be technical, like these elements have to be in it for it to be called a certain genre. But it can also be that some bands influenced other bands, and unless those bands make a statement about it, you wouldn't really have a way to be absolutely sure. If you disagree with my categorization of different genres, that's totally fine. Goth, of course, but I'm heavily into the more romantic, the softer, more atmospheric side of goth music. Neofolk. This genre is a little bit tricky to explain or to talk about because people have very different ideas and opinions about what is neofolk and what is not. For some, it has to do with industrial music, many associated with folk rock. And for me, I just take the word quite literally. Neo means new, so new folk music or experimental folk music. And that could be from different parts of the world, elements of traditional folk music, but it's not played in a way that you could call it traditional. It could be inspired by folk music sounds from around the world. Neofolk also has a hard time with being associated with right-wing and fascism, and I really don't want anything to do with that. You could call it experimental folk music, I guess, but not all neofolk is very experimental. It's not a requirement, so I have to do a more in-depth video about this. Other genres I like: traditional music from all around the world, jazz, classical, neoclassical. Next question. What is Sweden's goth scene like? Currently, I don't know of any clubs that do regular club nights or regular concerts dedicated to goth. Fresh day, fresh battery, fresh location. So where were we? The Swedish goth scene. I do miss the local goth club I used to go to 15-20 years ago, but it's really hard to make a living and find time to run a niche club or a niche festival. So if you do have one that you go to, don't take it for granted. But there are events and concerts sometimes, and I'm so happy for all the people who work so hard to make it happen. I have to talk a little bit about the history of goth in Sweden. You see, in the 80s, we had 2 main subcultures in Sweden: hard rock and synth. Those two were supposed to be at war with each other. If you ask a Swedish person what goth is, you are not likely to get an explanation that is even close to accurate. I've mentioned before that I didn't hear the word goth until around 97, and that is because of the subculture of synth. The participants are called syntare. It's heavily overlapping with goth, but it's not synonymous. It's of course evolving around the synthesizer as an instrument or element in the music, but there's actually so much more to it. Many synth bands were influenced by goth, but actually also more directly from, for example, krautrock, and not necessarily taking the route through Batcave. Many Swedish syntare would not like to be called goths, but there are also many of us who just call it goth when we talk to international people because it's just a word everybody understands. People who were more purely into gothic rock were often referred to as depprockare, as in depressive rock, or svartrockare, as in black rock. So if you're trying to find goth people in Sweden and you find you have no luck, try asking for syntare or depprockare. There are also scenes that doesn't have anything per definition to do with goth, but you tend to find goth people there. The traditional folk scene in Sweden is very much alive, and they have a very including and positive community. I've been invited to play at folk festivals numerous times, and the Neofolk scene is very small, but in the folk scene there are many people that really like experimental folk music, and I always have a very positive experience. I also have a special interest in our native Sami culture. I don't have Sami blood that I know of, but my parents were both born in Finland, so I am myself a part of a minority in Sweden. Maybe that's why I feel a special connection with Sami people, I don't know, but I've met and performed with Sami artists and learned so much from them. I really connect with the philosophy in Sami culture around music, especially how and why you sing. And lastly, many in Sweden share a great interest in our Viking history. Myself, I've reenacted as a Viking. We don't know exactly what Viking music sounded like, but it really sparks the imagination. And what I do when I create is I just take all of these sources of inspiration and personal interest and combine them. Now lastly, some quick questions with short answers, I promise. Genre I can't stand. Super auto-tuned and repetitive pop music. First idol, Roxette. She's Got the Look. That was the song that got me hooked when I was 6 years old. But music that still sticks with me to this day that I also discovered as a young kid was Refused, the Swedish hardcore band, and also experimental folk bands Gamarna and Hedningarna. First music memory. This isn't the first memory exactly, but it's a very significant one. I think I was maybe 8. And my dad took me to see some family friends, and when we arrived there was the song Take On Me by a-ha on the radio, and my dad was a real music lover, so he could see that this song really caught my attention, so I was allowed to just sit by myself in the car and finish listening to that song while he went inside. And there were raindrops falling on the window as I listened to this magical song. That combination of his amazing voice and all the layers of melodies. An uplifting song, but also a bit melancholic, that just blew my mind. Favorite sad song? Chris Isaak, Wicked Game. Favorite happy song? Who You Gonna Call? Ghostbusters. Favorite song to dance to? Duff, Dansen Mussolini. Guilty pleasure? Power ballads. Just love to sing karaoke to those. like Mariah Carey, Without You, or Scorpions, Still Loving You. I don't even feel guilty at all. Favorite cover song, This Mortal Coil, Song to the Siren. Can't remember who did the original, sorry. CDs? Yes, I listen to CDs in my car, especially CDs that you can't really find online. Vinyl. No, unfortunately my player broke and I don't have enough vinyls to justify buying a new one. Inspiration for creating my own music. I do find that listening to music that is too close to what I want to achieve makes it a little bit harder because I compare it too much. So I do listen to music that has the mood that I'm after. It could be classical music, or it's often composers like Vangelis or Jocelyn Pook. Unexpected music you like. It's not very surprising for people who know me, but I mentioned my Finnish heritage and I love evergreen songs from Finland. The tattoo on my arm is a quote from a Finnish song, and I might tell you the story of that another time. The sun is getting really strong, so forgive me if you can't see my eyes. Last song you listened to. Technically it was an ambience track, but I don't know the creator of that track. Ambience is, by the way, another genre I really like and listen to a lot. An artist I can name that I listened to a few days ago is Anna von Hauswolf. I really recommend her. Last question. If I could change anything about the music industry today, what would it be? Well, the platforms today don't favor artists like me that take some time to get into, that have very slow build-ups to songs. You do need music for other occasions except for parties and malls and commercials. But it's hard to catch listeners and build an audience if you don't have a hook that comes in the first 15 seconds of a song. But I do think that there is a demand for avant-garde or experimental or slow music. It's so much harder to find that music. That said, I really don't want to go back to the days where only people that were picked up by big labels were promoted, and today anyone can make music and put it online. And I am so happy to tell you that I am now on Spotify. It's only one song so far, but I am going to be re-releasing an old album soon and also put other old songs and of course my new songs on there, so check it out.